Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JavaScript for Beginners. Now in this video we're going to be talking about objects, and objects are kind of an interesting concept in JavaScript, and this is somewhat specific to JavaScript, at least in the way that it's implemented, but nonetheless it is very useful. Now I think the best analogy to think of when thinking of objects is it's kind of like a dictionary in the sense that when you use objects in JavaScript, you give it words to look up. Like say I want to look up Matthew, and then that word, when you look it up, can give you back another word. It could give you back a number, it could give you back a function, it could give you back another object, it could give you anything. So that's what objects essentially are. They are somewhat like dictionaries, where you give it something, and then it can give you back something. And in specific, you give it a word to look up, and then it'll look up that word in the dictionary and then give you what's in that place, essentially. So to go ahead and see this in action, we will start by opening up our Visual Studio Code and setting up our environment. Whoops. So yeah, you can also go File, Open Folder in WSL instead of going through there, and that works the same. Let's come here. Yep. Or right here. Right. So in the last episode, let's go ahead and start up our live server. So remember, just have the HTML open and then hit the Go Live button. And that should start up here. Inspect element, open our console. I'm going to reload. And this is the code we had from the last video. It just printed these examples when we were talking about arrays. Remember, this is how you create an array, and then you can push two arrays, and then you can loop over them and print their elements. So we're going to go ahead and delete this code for now. But and also remember, actually, you can always check out my code on my GitHub, which is also linked in the description. It says all of the code in my videos, and over there you can actually see the code from each individual video. That way we didn't really lose anything. Whenever I always delete all the video at the beginning, or all the code at the beginning of each video, that can still be found on my GitHub. So to get started with objects, they are just like any other variable. You start with let to create them, and then let's actually use a dictionary for an example to start with, because I think that's the best way. So dictionary object, or we can just say let dictionary equals, and then the way to create an object is you just go straight into curly brackets. Like when you go if and then use curly brackets, or for and then use curly brackets, these are not quite the same. This is just the notation, so don't get those confused. They don't have the same meaning as when you use them in other places, but when you use them like this on the right side of an equal sign, then they create an object, essentially. Now, the way we can actually give it stuff to look up, we can say like book is what we're gonna, like, is one of the keys they say in the object, meaning if you look up book and then you put a colon after, you will get something back. And let's just say you can get back a thing you can read. And then if I save that, actually you don't need to put, in fact, I don't think you should put parentheses around the key. So you look up book and you get a thing you can read. And then and then you put a comma after, and then we can say like fork, a thing you can eat with, and so on. Like we can say water bottle, or we can go water bottle, it really doesn't matter. A thing you can drink out of. And we're just going to use those three for now. So if I console.log, if I print our dictionary, we will see over here, it gives us this. And this is another one, like the array, where we click it and expand it. And it shows book, a thing you can read, fork, a thing you can eat with, water bottle, a thing you can drink out of. And remember, this kind of looks somewhat like the array from last one, except last time it was 0, 1, 2. Like if you notice, on the left side of those colons, you had an index, the place in the array. Well, in a dictionary, it's kind of like an array, except the places are words instead of numbers. You have words to kind of denote the place. So in order to get, say, the book definition, we do the same thing as an array. We can open up these square brackets and then put book, which is the key. And then if we reload, it says a thing you can read, which is the corresponding entry. Now, another notation we can use is we can go dictionary dot fork, for example, and then it says a thing you can eat with. So both of these syntaxes are correct, because remember, the dot, as we explained in last video, means possession, meaning this dictionary variable here has an entry called fork, and that's possession. It has that entry. Or we can go dictionary, open and close square brackets, and then put fork on the inside, and that gives us the same thing in the console. Both work. And in different situations, you might have to use different ones. But for now, just know that those both exist, and both of them are equally fine. So another thing we can actually do, like I said, is we can put anything on this receiving end. So let's say we put book, and then let's just say it returns 1, for example. If I say dictionary book, it can return 1 as well. It doesn't have to be a string. It doesn't have to be a word. We could also have it return null, for example. If you remember from the first video, this is kind of like, it kind of just means nothing. It does not exist. And then it also prints null. And then we could even set it, and here's the cool part. We can set it to a function. Remember, in order to create a function, we type function, and then we open and close our parentheses, and then we add our curly brackets. And then what we can have this thing do is say console.log I am a book. And go ahead. So as you can see, we have the book entry here, and then a colon. And then we kind of just stick a function in here, because remember before we would go function. In fact, it's a little bit different, because we would say function and then like say hi, and then we would put our parentheses and our brackets and write all of our code in here. But when we're actually using it as part of the dictionary, we don't have to put a name. It's just function, and then empty name, and then just parentheses kind of deal. And if we go ahead and change this here, in fact, when we use a function, we want to use the dot syntax. When I was saying there's certain cases where you'll have to use only one syntax, it's this one. Because we go dictionary dot book, and then we call that function, which means we tell that function to run itself. And if we reload, it says I am a book, and then it prints undefined. But that's because it does not return anything. So if I just say dictionary dot book right here, then it'll say I am a book. And for example, if this function, remember, it can return things, it returned 1, and then we went and printed the results. If we save this, it'll say I'm a book, and then it'll say 1, because we are printing what this function returns, what it gives back to us. Remember, functions can take in data, which in this case it does not, since these parentheses are empty. It does stuff with that data, or it just does stuff. It prints, and then it returns. It gives back something, which in this case I just have it return 1. I can have it return hi as well. And then if we reload here, it'll say I'm a book, and then hi. Oops. Yeah. So that is essentially the basics of objects. And in this case, I think the best way to think about them, at least in the beginning, is as somewhat of a dictionary, where you look up a certain word like book, and then you get something back. You could get back a string, a number, a boolean, a function, another object, and that is kind of where I'm going to go into the next example. So we're going to go ahead and delete this, and we are going to create a people dictionary. And then remember, we want to open up our dictionary using these curly brackets. So as the first key, we are going to have Matthew, which is a person. And then or actually remember, we don't need these. So we'll just say Matthew like this, and then we'll put a colon, and then we will link to another object. Now remember, we create objects with these brackets, and then when we have a key, it could return anything. It could return like Matthew, or it can actually just return another object, which we do by creating 2 more curly brackets. And then Matthew owns more objects, so we could put name, and then Matthew, and then we could put age, and then 16, and then we could put favorite color, and then we can put blue, for example. And then we can put a comma and add another entry into this dictionary. For example, James. We can say name is James, age is 14, and then favorite color is gray, for example. And we can actually print this people dictionary here. We load it, and if you'll notice here, it has two entries, James and Matthew. And if we open up those entries, each of them has their own entries. They have age, favorite color, and name. Age, favorite color, and name. So we could print people dictionary dot Matthew dot age. And remember, what this means is Matthew owned by the people dictionary, and then the age owned by Matthew, which is 16. Because if you'll notice, if we come into this dictionary here, we go into the Matthew entry, and we search right here, and then it says age, so we search the age entry, and it says 16, and that's what gets printed. So that's been objects, really. I think those are the main examples that I have for today. I hope you can see how, like, they're very powerful in code, really. They allow us to look up anything with a certain key, and really, as far as I've seen, because I've seen quite a few different programming languages, these are fairly unique, not completely unique, but fairly unique to JavaScript, at least in the sense that they are part of the syntax. Like, you don't have to mess around with like extra code in order to get these to work in JavaScript because they're built into the programming language, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, this has been objects, and like I said, a recap would be objects are essentially like dictionaries. They have keys and they have values, really. You give it a key and it'll print back your value. It could give you back a string, a number, a function, another object, as we can see here. It could give you back anything, really. So if you happen to miss any of the previous videos in this series, or if you want to check out other videos in this series, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description where I'll be uploading daily. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.